You're listening to Releasing Trauma, a survivor's podcast. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about loss and moving from loss to light. And with me is Maria DeLuna. And we're going to be talking a little bit about her story, how she went from the loss of her son and her mother to doing light work and spiritual healing and all of that. So, Maria, welcome to the show.
Hi, hello, and thank you so much for having me. And hello, everybody who's listening as well. What a beautiful way to start. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, thank you for coming on the show. Let's talk a little bit about your journey and how it all started.
Absolutely. So I actually am a spiritual guide myself. I've been very spiritual since the age of 3. I have all of the clairs available to me, which are your 5 senses: hearing, feeling, seeing, sensing, and smelling, everything. So when I was younger, I actually went into certain different losses. I lost my father as well, too, at the age of 6. And that was one of the biggest traumas that started it all, really, is really just going into that more. As my journey began at that time. And I moved forward into so my family's actually originally from Spain. My mother's Filipina, but she and my dad met in Madrid. And when my father died, my mother lost herself. That was, as she always told me, was her soulmate. So she started really feeling sicknesses and ailments at a young age for me. And when we moved to Canada at the age of 8, it was really just like trying to learn how to balance myself with people who didn't understand spirituality and light as well in that same sense. I was brought into a Catholic school when I first came to Canada. I know people are like, huh? So it was very, very different. And as I was growing up, I got into a relationship with someone who I thought was the person I was going to have a life with. I've been with him for 8 years. We built businesses together, had many amazing, things like materialistic things like cars, houses, travel, you name it. Everything was there. But deep inside, I knew there was something missing. And then I got gifted by God to have a son at that time. And at my 8 months of my pregnancy, coming home from Seattle to our brand new house that we built that was over 14,000 square feet, I caught him with a receptionist. Oops. And so as I was trying to walk away, he pushed me down the stairs. And that is when I lost my son. He died inside my stomach. And I had a hard time with that. That was over 7 years ago. And I have to say that was one of my darkest, most horrible moments of my life. My soul died. And this is something that can occur several times for someone who works with the light. So my soul died and I couldn't get up. I couldn't do anything. I was in such a distraught state of depression. I nearly jumped a bridge when that happened, because as we all know, we always want to be a mother. And so it felt like it was taken away from me at that time. And I screamed at the top of my lungs at the universe in a basement as I was laying on the floor. And I just said, why did you do this to me? What have I done to you? And at that state and moment, I had Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, and my father's image pop up in the physical realm for me. As I said, I can see. And I literally looked, and my dad says, I would have never left you. This was meant to happen this way because you are meant to do more. And he told me to get up. And I refused a couple times. And then he said, no, I need you to get up. And it took me a while. And my mom as well, too, at that time was also my savior as well. She called me and said, just go outside, do things. And it took me some time. It was one of the longest, hardest losses I had to deal with because I was so excited. I was really excited to be a mom. It was one of the things that I've always wanted as a kid. And then about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, my mother had her cancer come back again. And so she asked me to return to Edmonton. I sold everything I had. I gave all my businesses away. I provided it to people I knew and just went from there. Took my dog into my Audi and we drove during wintertime through the Kukupala. So that was from BC to Alberta in Canada. And so during that time, about 2 years now, she said, I don't want to take any more chemo. I just want to be with your dad. And I took this as the hardest because I thought she was giving up until I realized that she had sacrificed her health, her power, who she was, so that I could stay alive for the longest time. I realized that she was suffering for over 20 years because she literally wanted to go, but couldn't because she wanted to make sure I was okay. And that also took me some time to realize as well, too. I was angry. I was hurt. I felt like I was crumbling again. And then another ascension phase happened for me. And again, my dad showed up and he was just like, don't worry, I got you. This is okay. This is where we need to be. And my ancestors who I work with were also there. And they said, don't worry, we've got you. We're guiding you. So as my mom is spiritual also, she taught me all that she knew in such a short amount of time of 8 months. Because the doctors had told her she only had about 6 to 8 months to live. And so as she was deteriorating, I was removed away from her because of COVID. And because of the way the situation with COVID had happened, I wasn't allowed to see her anymore during her last couple of months. And so that, again, was one of the hardest outcomes also.
Was she in the hospital or was she at home? Okay.
In the hospital. We tried to have her at the hospital for a couple of months. Unfortunately, it didn't work with the machines. And then she got sent back to the hospital. The doctors told me that I couldn't see her because of too many cases occurring in the hospital. I'll be honest, I fought strong and hard to try and get that not to be the case, but I get it. You know, they're doing what they can in their job, and it was understandable. Everybody was in such a fear state at that time, and that was over 2 years. And so I lost my mom in January 2021. And on the last moment that I was able to say goodbye to her, she had gone into a state of comatose where they told me I had no other choice. And so because I had made a promise with her that I wouldn't keep her here too long, I did what was the hardest thing. And no daughter in the world should ever have to do that. It was most definitely hard. And it's still painful.
Sure, it's still fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but every single day that I think about it, I've also given her the light that she wanted. And that is the biggest gift you can give someone too. Sometimes we tend to forget that no matter how hard we want something to stay or to maintain her, we also have to remember that they're staying for a certain reason and they're only able to stay for a certain amount of time as well. And if they're choosing to do something, you can't take that away from them. So I didn't, and I just did what I did. And we did her ashes spreading in February, and I'm right back at Playa de Carmen all over again. So it's been an adventure, but one of the most strongest things I found is that every day is a wake-up call for you to just live your life as much as you can. And when you do, always live it with light and love consistently.
You've been through some stuff. Holy cow. I have to ask, and forgive me for asking this, but with your son, your boyfriend, your partner, was he charged?
Yes,
Good.
He was. I
just want to make sure justice was done there.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it wasn't about to be malicious or mean on my end or anything, but it was just it was to me like you had decided to do something that you thought wasn't occurring. And this is where I strongly urge women to really look at their situation if they are with someone who is abusive or narcissistic, or someone who takes away your power as a woman. What I went through, I hope to God no one else ever has to go through. And I'm telling my story because I want women to continue to rise into themselves. And because of those traumas, I've been able to come into my light. But I hope that no one has to lose their son the way I did, or someone passes away drastically because of we are unaware or don't know, oh, is he the right guy? Maybe he's just being nice. Trust your energy, trust yourself, trust your heart and your gut, and trust your guides, because they are truly there to help you. When I chose not to listen, that was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn, because I chose not to listen. And so I urge women, when you're in a situation, really look at it and see, is this the right thing for me? And sit with it for a while if you have to, but do what is absolutely best, safe, and honoring to you, your energy, and yourself.
Absolutely. You talked about listening to your guides, and that brings up a point of, when we're in that state of grief and mourning and anger and all of that emotions, we shut ourselves off from people, but from our higher powers, whatever they may be, whatever you want to call them. We just close ourselves off. And how, when we get to that state, how can we open back up again? How do we open back up to, our guides, our spiritual beings, our light?
Well, the one lesson that I have always taught myself and my clients and those who come into my container with me is take it day by day. Don't overforce yourself to do something. Take a minute to breathe. Breath is so important when it comes to coming back into your state of mind, into your state of your spirit, because sometimes what I call it is the path of darkness. We get so consumed with our thoughts, right? With, oh my gosh, what did I do? How did I do this? Why is this happening? Come back into your breath and then sit still as much as you can. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, doesn't matter. Just take a moment of stillness for yourself and come back into your light, come back to yourself. And then your guides will be right there. They're always there. They're always waiting for you to acknowledge them. They've never left. And just come back day by day. Take it moment by moment if you can. And that's my biggest advice in getting back from all of the, traumatic experiences. And honestly, the moment you wake up is also the moment that you came back to your light as well. So you waking up every single day is also another thing I have to say too, because, we could do certain things that can cause more hindrance. As I said, I tried to commit suicide. And as I was standing there on the bridge with my dog watching me, I realized, I was like, what am I doing? This is not okay. This is not okay. This is not how I want my life to be. And so just taking that moment and saying, thanking yourself for waking up, giving yourself gratitude, getting back to who you are, just remembering what it is that you love about life.
Absolutely. The bridge, what was it? This in Vancouver?
Yeah, that's right.
Was it the Lionsgate?
Right beside Richmond.
Was it the Lionsgate Bridge?
Yeah.
I used to live up there.
Oh, okay. I was like,
you're talking about staying on the bridge, and I'm going, it had to be Lionsgate Bridge.
it was the Lionsgate Bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. good times up there. Anyway, I totally digress. So, you talk about, you hope that nobody ever has to go through those really hard traumas and grief and everything. And I agree. I've been there. I lost dad in 2008. I lost my best friend in 2012, my mom in 2016, and my husband in 2019. And the only one that I really knew was coming was dad. I knew dad was coming because his cancer had come back. He couldn't fight it anymore. And, he made the choice to not fight. And he always told us that when the pain got too much and he just couldn't do it anymore, he was going off dialysis and just let his body shut down. And I got to tell you, out of all the deaths that I've experienced, that was the most profound experience. And something I will never forget, because we were all there. My sister, my brothers, my stepmom, nieces, nephews, we were all there around his bed. And at the moment that he died, I felt this just surge of energy go through the top and all the way down. And then all of a sudden my sister went, and I looked at her, I went, Dad just hugged you, didn't he? Because he just did the same thing to me. And then I could hear singing, and it was people singing, I've got the joy, joy, joy down in my heart. I could hear that. And, after, we kind of calmed down a little bit, we were talking about things, and I said, I just keep hearing this song. Somebody else had heard the tune, and somebody else had the word joy stuck in their head. And it was just, and these are people that are not spiritual by any stretch of the imagination. My sister and I are, and my little brother, but the rest of them were like not spiritual at all. They didn't believe in all the woo-woo kind of stuff. And it was just the most profound experience. And I think being able to be part of that really helped with the grieving process. It was so much different than, waking up one day and finding out my best friend was dead, or, my husband having a heart attack on the front porch. And 3 days later, I turned off his life support. Completely different grieving experiences, And I think, I felt very fortunate for that one to be part of it. And it was just such a beautiful experience. But grief is tough. Grief is very, very
Certainly.
tough. When Mark died, that was probably one of the, between Mark and my best friend, those were the two really toughest for me. I went down that dark spiral, and I had moments where I didn't want to commit suicide. I just didn't want to wake up. I didn't, it wasn't that I wanted to die or anything. I just wanted to go to sleep, and I just didn't want to wake up again. Because when I'm asleep, there's no pain.
Exactly. And it's at that moment where you're just like, why should I wake up? Why should I even be here? Those questions come into our mind when we're in grief so much every single day. And I'm going to be very honest, every single day, that question still comes into my mind all the time. Sure. And I think it's just part of the movement inside of our soul. And I know grief, trauma, anything that has ever challenged us so far into really reaching into ourselves is most honestly one of the hardest experiences, but it's the greatest awakening to your spiritual soul, the greatest connection. Lots of people talk about different ways of waking up or coming into our spiritual gifts and woo-woo gifts, right? But I truly, honestly, 100% believe that we have to go through some grief in ourselves in a certain way. Doesn't always have to be the way that you, like yourself or myself, have gone through, but in a certain way. And whatever that may be, it definitely helps you to realize that you're here to do what you need to do for yourself and to really honor your soul and spirit. And when you talk about, losing your dad, in the moment that you felt that energetical movement inside of yourself, and you're like looking at your sister saying, dad just hugged you.
Yeah.
That to me is one of the most beautiful experiences. I know when my mom passed, I could feel her in my house just watching me. And then she couldn't come through right away through the veil, but I could see images of small speckles of light coming. And I looked and I could feel like she was just touching me, telling me she's okay. And, sometimes people are like, I wish I never see, but to be honest, it's one of the most beautiful gifts I could ever ask for, because I get to really acknowledge her spirit every single day. So I would just want to honor you and your moment with your dad. That was beautiful.
Yeah, it absolutely was. It's something I'll never forget. And I wish everybody could experience loss in that, that beautifully of a way, as opposed to the tragic ways that most of us end up doing it. Yeah. We're not immune to grief. No. And everybody is going to be exposed to it at some point or another in their lives. So, what are some other steps that helped you, kind of pull you out with all of your different traumas?
Honestly, having an amazing support system of friends was one of the biggest things I could ever have asked for. When I left Vancouver, it was my mom, and I still had grieved for quite some time, but it was truly finding my tribe and connecting and being honest and speaking my truth and talking about my story. Even though it took me quite some time to get here, was one of the biggest, most amazing things of helping to release that pain that was held inside of my heart for so long. Even the pain of my son, even to this day, I still grieve over it, but not in a way of feeling like I had to hold on like I did before, or like it was my fault, or things like that would come up into my mind. But I would go into these things called goddess circles and, connections with sisterhood. And I was really thankful for a friend of mine who connected me in Edmonton with lots of people. And I had no one at that time. I only had my mom. So I isolated myself. And when I was able to finally express who I was, that really helped me a lot. And I think it's just about being able to open up and talking about it was one of the biggest things that helped my light come forth continuously. Practicing my meditations to help me balance my energy all the time and really staying true to myself and not overwhelming my thoughts consistently was also helpful. But honestly, sisterhood and tribe and community, nothing more better than having that. I mean, you can giggle all the time, but when you talk about, grief and trauma and being true and crying your eyes out with lots of tissues everywhere, it was beautiful. And I still to this day do it every single year. I connect with a lot of women and I speak my truth, and with all my sisters, the same thing. I couldn't have asked for a better way to help myself. So, being open.
I love that. And I agree. Support, hands down. You've got to have it, because, when we lose our people, everybody comes out of the woodwork and I'm so sorry. What can I do? How can I support you? How can I help you? Are you okay? Did you eat today? And then about 2 weeks later, they all kind of fade back into the woodwork, and you're still in shock most of the time, or, alternating between different emotions. Having that support who gets it and is just there for you is absolutely crucial. I wouldn't have gotten through losing Mark if I didn't have I immediately went and found a support group, and they got it. When I was whining and complaining, I just miss him. I just want him back. I just, all of that, they understood. And that was just absolutely instrumental in my healing. Yeah. So I agree that support group is absolutely a must.
Yeah. I was like polar opposite. I kept trying to hide it all the time. I'm like, I'm fine. Okay. And, it's, I couldn't have asked for a better support system in my life too. And, it's so important for us, especially for those who go through so much grief and loss. And it takes us out of our comfort zone, especially when we like jump into it. Right. So it's beautiful to have. So yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, Maria, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, sharing your story, sharing your light with us. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Listeners, you know the drill. I will have all of Maria's contact information in the show notes. Just go to releasingtraumapodcast.com and pull up her episode, and all of her information will be there. And if you're listening to this on one of our platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever platform you're listening or app you're listening on, give us a like, and we'll talk to you in the next show. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a show. Be sure to check us out on our new socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.